What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Daydreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Esteban. If you're new here, once again, welcome. Happy to have you be a part of the Daydreamers community. And if you are a returning listener, of course, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening and for enjoying the show. I'm really glad that people have been enjoying the different things that we talk about, all the different films, TV shows, the music that we talk about here. And, just happy to be building this community for the show. So happy Friday to everybody. Of course, this episode will be releasing on a Friday. Also, as of today, 105 days left till Halloween. I told you guys in the last episode, I'm going to keep this counter going until we're pretty much there. So spooky season quickly approaching. I mentioned in the last episode too, definitely excited to get decorations going. I know a lot of the stores, 4th of July, it's gone. It's done. So now it's time to get all your decorations for spooky season. And I know places like Hobby Lobby, At Home, even like Target, Walmart, all the department stores, they all got their stuff slowly coming in on the shelves, which I got to see a little bit of it already. So I'm gonna have to just be careful not to go too crazy getting some stuff. But in any case, very excited to see what's coming. Also, speaking of spooky season, and I know last episode I talked a little bit about Obsession. Got to check that out a couple weeks ago, and it was great. I definitely am looking forward to watching that. I know it's going to come out on streaming pretty soon too, so I'm probably going to check that out again, rewatch it. But also, I finally got to watch Backrooms. It was still showing at my local AMC, so we went to go check that out, my girlfriend and I, and we really enjoyed it. It's because it's a different type of movie, right, in terms of like the horror genre. Because I wouldn't even say it's all the way horror. I would say there's also an element of, well, actually, I feel like the main element of it was really like a psychological thriller, and like the symbolism in the movie, and just how creative the story was told, and also just it was very eerie in its own way. I feel like a lot of the movie was kind of left to your imagination in terms of like, what do you make of the situation, what do you think it truly means, and like, just the use of like very eerie like music the whole time. It was very unsettling throughout the whole movie, and like you had this anticipation that you kind of held on to for like 80% of the movie. So that was a lot of fun, and I feel like there's a lot to unpack. And like I've mentioned this before in a previous episode, but my girlfriend, she works in the realm of like mental health and like social work and all that. So I could tell that, she was like really unraveling a lot of different like patterns and like, again, like symbolisms and things like, what does it really mean? What is it trying to say, like message wise? So a lot of that was pretty dope. I really enjoyed it. And that's definitely a movie like you could watch probably a few times and kind of take something or pick apart things a little bit differently every time. So I love movies like that. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing what other, creepy ass movies are coming out later this year as we jump into Halloween. And I'll kind of keep you all updated on any other scary movies that we watched for the first time, or maybe ones that my girlfriend is seeing for the first time, or just new ones that are going to be coming out. I'm sure there's a handful that are going to be coming out as well. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm very excited. I almost was able to get tickets, but I haven't gotten a chance yet. Kind of shifting gears here. I really want to go watch The Odyssey. People are talking really great things about it, so I can't wait to go check out the movie myself. I'm probably going to go watch it with my dad, because the last Christopher Nolan movie, funny enough, which was Oppenheimer, loved that movie too. My dad and I went to go see it, and because he's a big history buff, like he loves like historical films, but he also really likes period pieces, especially like in the time of like for instance, one of his favorite movies is Gladiator. So like movies like that, Troy, and so I know that Odyssey will be like a really entertaining movie for him. It'll be right up his alley, and I love Christopher Nolan in general, all his movies. So really looking forward to that. Gonna try to at least go see it once in IMAX, because you got to. It's one of those movies that, if they shot it on, especially this one was shot in 70 millimeter, which I know I'm talking like nerd talk. For any of you who don't know, like 70 millimeter is like one of the biggest screens possible that you could shoot on in terms of film, and it just allows for like a really great scope when you're watching the movie. I know the AMC theaters at Universal City Walk, for any of you that are in Southern California, that's probably the closest one, kind of like within the LA, Southern California area. Beautiful way to watch a movie though. So highly recommend if you ever get a chance, or if you're a big movie person and you want to just see it on the biggest screen possible. It's like some, especially it's like a big dad thing. I feel like a lot of people will they want to get the best and biggest TV screen possible for the house. It's like one of the few things that are like untouchable to anyone else. And I feel like that's like that on steroids. So in any case, looking forward to that. We're also just a couple of weeks away now from Spider-Man Brand New Day. Really looking forward to that. I've just barely scratched the surface with the Into the Spider-Verse, or the Spider-Verse movies, the animated Spider-Man movies with Miles Morales. I still got to binge all the other Spider-Man movies, especially Tom Holland's leading up to Brand New Day. And as I mentioned before, I'm also looking forward to having my first guest on, my brother-in-law, Daniel Embry. We're going to be talking about all things Spider-Man, but also just diving into all kinds of fun stuff, answering questions and that kind of thing. So lots of fun to look forward to there. And of course, in the subject of what's been going on lately and with film, I don't think it's a secret. I've added a couple things to the, for those of you who are, excuse me, watching on YouTube, you can see that I've added a couple of things here in the background because actually I recorded last week's episode. So what, like 2-3 days later, I'm scrolling on my phone before I go to bed, and I come across, and it had just been posted. I think it was like 15 minutes, maybe it was up on Instagram. And I saw that the legend Sam Neill had passed away. And for those of you who don't know who Sam Neill is, you can probably guess again if you're watching the episode here, that he was the actor that played Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park. That was kind of like one of his biggest roles, probably one of the roles that defined him as an actor and in his career. He's done a handful of other things too. I'll be honest. One of the only other things that I've seen him in though was the Netflix show Peaky Blinders. He was a really good part of that show. But for me, I mean, you can see I have the poster. I have all kinds of like Jurassic Park stuff. I mean, down to I don't know if you can. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. But for those of you who are listening, like I have my Jurassic Park shirt. I got the poster in the back. I got the backpack, the little lounge fly. I have a couple of these actually. I got the Jurassic World mug. But I'm even wearing I got my Jurassic Park socks here. Let me see. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I had to show my leg there a little bit, but yeah. No, yeah. So I've talked a little bit about it on the show before, but Jurassic Park is my favorite film of all time. And there's a few reasons why. It's one of the first movies I ever remember watching as a kid. Because, I was born in 97, and if I'm correct, the first Jurassic Park came out in 1993. So I immediately got hooked because when I was little, one of the biggest thing, probably the biggest thing I was into at the time was dinosaurs, just in general. And like my dream was to become a paleontologist, like to dig up dinosaur bones and fossils and to preserve them and to know all the facts about all these dinosaurs and to work in a museum or to go somewhere in Montana and dig up dinosaur bones for the rest of my life. That's really what I wanted to do. But one of the biggest reasons why was after watching Jurassic Park, I wanted to be Dr. Grant. Like that was my life's goal. And I fell in love with that movie and his character, even just because he embodied what I wanted to be when I grew up as a kid, but also I loved, like, as I got older, I appreciated his character more, just as a film character. Like he's someone who doesn't really care to have kids, but he slowly becomes the safeguard for the kids that are in the movie. And so he has like a character development that's pretty cool in the movie, in the midst of being this dinosaur expert. And even in because he also comes out in a couple of the other like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies, reprising his role. And it's just it's so sad to know that he's gone, because he was one of the most iconic characters that I resonated with on film, but I also like just admired, and I think we all know that, like, whether it's a movie, a TV show, any kind of storytelling that you see, there's a few people that you'll watch where, whether it's their character or them just as an actor or both, you just appreciate what they've done, or what that character meant to you personally. And he was definitely one of those guys. So many iconic things in that movie, and he was definitely one of the biggest parts of that movie that I think made the film so iconic. And it was just a different time. It's a very nostalgic drawback watching Jurassic Park. Like I just, rewatching the movie again after hearing about his passing, like it hits different for sure, knowing that he's gone. But, I think another thing that was really interesting, which again just tells you the power of storytelling and film, is that there's a lot of people, and I know I personally can't relate to this, but I thought it was a pretty cool thing that a lot of people were saying on social media. Like, people were saying, like, he was a father figure to me because my father wasn't in my life. A lot of people online were saying that. And I never thought about it that way. Obviously, like, I'm fortunate and blessed enough that, my dad is still very much in my life. But, for many people who maybe didn't have a father figure, one of the things you might seek, in terms of maybe having some sort of father figure in your life is maybe on film. And I can see that character being a very powerful example, or something to really, to look at and to admire and to appreciate. So rest in peace, Sam Neill, Dr. Grant. He was one of the coolest movie characters, in my opinion. I'm probably gonna have to dress up for him for Halloween. I've always wanted to do that, so I'll probably do that this year. Maybe we'll see. Again, speaking of spooky season, I'll keep you guys posted and keep you updated as we go along. But yeah, in any case, I'll never also shy away from a reason to talk about Jurassic Park. I mean, I could spend episodes just talking about what I love about the movie, and just all the great things about that movie that I feel like probably just set a tone for future filmmaking. I mean, I will say there was a couple things that I did want to mention that, especially rewatching the movie just recently, like, that I think is just so cool. Like, the other thing, and that's going to touch partially on the subject that I wanted to talk about today. The fact that Jurassic Park was one of those movies that you can tell that they both were borrowing or like paying homage to like classic films that came way before, the 90s, and that was kind of like that helped set the tone for film at the time. But also really set the tone for future films. Like, I think about the fact that, as a random example, I know that Jurassic Park, and you see it a lot like on the logo, or like, but the gate, like the opening gate that says, excuse me, my throat is really scratchy. So sorry about that, guys. Let me get some tea here. Yeah, that's better. So in any case, so the gate that they drive through in the film. And for those of you who maybe haven't seen the movie, look, I know I've suggested many movies on this podcast, and I'm probably going to suggest many more. If there's going to be a really big suggestion that I'm going to have, it's Jurassic Park. Please watch it. Even if you don't care about dinosaurs, or you feel like it's not going to be up your alley, just watch it. I promise you won't necessarily regret it. But in any case, so yes, in the film, there's a section where they're finally going to take the tour of Jurassic Park, and then they're approaching in their Jeeps. They're approaching the gate, the big gate that has Jurassic Park with the flames on it, and they're driving in. And one of the characters, played by the legendary Jeff Goldblum, talking about legends, they're driving in, and you see from a camera angle him looking up at the gate, and he goes, "What do they got in there, King Kong?" And because the gate is massive, and it's funny because that's actually paying homage to one of the original King Kong films. The production team, or I don't know if it was the writers or the visual team, they had put that gate together in paying homage to King Kong being one of the first like big monster movies that allows for a movie like King Kong walked so Jurassic Park could run. So that was a really cool tidbit. I know another thing that I think is pretty cool is there's a line in the movie where because basically the how can I say this? The basis around the movie is there's like a really rich guy who buys an island, and he's into like building like some kind of like attraction or theme park. And he gets this idea working with scientists, learning that they can basically find a way to preserve dinosaur DNA, and wants to build a theme park out of it. and works with scientists and all this to do this, and they finally find a way to do it. And they have all these gates and precautions and this whole system of separating all the dinosaurs on the island, and even like just cool, their main lobby area is like a cool little like museum / archives thing, whatever. And so, but what they need to officially open the park is they need some expert opinions to sign off on it, so that their board members or their lawyers kind of like can sign off for the park. So in the film, there's a point where they get the experts on the island, Dr. Grant, played by Sam Neill, being one of them, and also Lauren Dern playing Dr. Sattler, and then Jeff Goldblum playing Dr. Ian Malcolm. So the three of them, they're kind of like this little trio that are going to help sign off on the park. And Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Malcolm, they're all walking up the stairs in the main office or building, and when they first get there, and what was it? I think Laura Dern's character, so Dr. Sattler, she's like, what do you think? What do you think of all this? And Dr. Grant goes, oh, I think we're out of the job. And Dr. Malcolm goes, don't you mean extinct? And it's like a funny little pun, referencing dinosaurs going extinct. But actually, there was a, for a lot of you who may not know, all the CGI in Jurassic Park was like the first of its kind. It hadn't been done before, so it was groundbreaking. But originally, when the movie was first being made, they were going to use stop motion. So movies like The Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, Corpse's Bride, especially, like, I know those are all oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Who is the guy that makes all those movies? He's such a strange man too, and but he's so iconic, and he makes, oh gosh, I'm blanking, you guys. What the heck is this guy's name? Well, anyway, those style of movies, a lot of you kind of know what I'm talking about, like the animation style, and basically what they do is it's stop motion. So like they have these little figurines and they keep moving them like frame by frame by frame, so that when you put them all together, it's basically a film. And so anyway, they were going to use that kind of animation style for the dinosaurs, but when they kept trying it just didn't work amidst like filming with the people in live action. So they just didn't. They had to find a different way, and that pushed them to eventually create this CGI that became what we saw in the movie. And that's why that line is in the movie. Is one of the stop motion like team members, or the head of that team, had expressed that, I think our job is going extinct. And someone in the production team heard that and said, I want to put that in the movie. And so now that line that Jeff Goldblum says in the movie, where he goes, don't you mean extinct? That's why that's in the movie. So it's like a fun little tidbit as to why that's in the film. I love stuff like that. Tim Burton. For any of you Tim Burton fans, I'm so sorry. I was trying to remember his name, but yeah. So he's the one. He's responsible for a lot of those stop motion movies. In any case, yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park is full of like fun tidbits like that, and cool like stories behind. Also, the film was just kind of like a headache with some of the animatronics with the dinosaurs, especially the T-Rex was known to like have a lot of like glitches because it was raining, and they're filming in Hawaii on an island that's very tropical, weather's very unpredictable, and yet you can never tell if you're watching the movie. And Steven Spielberg, being in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best director of our time, of my generation, is he's made so many great films. I know he had a very similar experience with Jaws. The fact that they said that the shark, which, what, I got to dive into this actually, because I just remembered this as soon as I mentioned Jaws. Jaws is one of those movies that I heard something about the way this movie was written versus how it actually came out. And I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but essentially Jaws, obviously a movie about a giant shark, a larger than life creature out in the ocean, and they're trying to figure out a way to, it's attacking people on the beach and they don't know what's going on. They're a little skeptical about what the real story behind it is. But in any case, there's, if you've watched Jaws, and spoilers if you haven't seen it, but like, I would say probably at least 50 to 60% of the movie goes by probably before you get a really good look at the shark for the very first time in the movie. But I guess that wasn't the original intention. I guess they wanted to use the shark a lot more in the movie, but the reason that it doesn't come out a lot is because it was a very big issue on set getting that shark to work. And that it was always a headache. It would always shut off or glitch. And so because of those, ongoing issues on set, they had to cut down how many scenes they actually show the shark in its full, fully on frame. And I guess because of that, it had created this element without necessarily them trying, where there's that anticipation, almost like what they do with horror movies sometimes, where like more than half the movie, you don't know what the threat is. You start hearing sounds, you get a little glimpse of it, it peeks out here and there. And there's kind of like this anticipation or creepiness, even this eeriness that builds because of that. And it's a really cool element. Again, one of the reasons why I love horror films is like, it's a really cool way to draw you in. And it's such a kick-ass thing to know that that wasn't their intention. And yet it set the standard for a lot of movies after that too. Because if you think about a lot of, scary movies, thriller, or like very intense films, sometimes that's how you build anticipation to like the third act, the climax of the movie, is you don't know exactly what the stakes are, you don't know what the threat is, and I love that, because then it's like you almost keep people invested in the film until you get to that part where you see the creature for the first time, or you see whatever the threat is. And they do that a lot with sci-fi movies too. I know, like with alien movies, or like even the original Predator. You don't see that creature until like the last 30 minutes of the movie. But I love that. I feel like a lot of times that's kind of what allows you, especially when it's an original movie and you really truly don't know. It's a great way to watch a movie for the first time, because you just really don't know what to expect. So I love that. And that's what I love about Steven Spielberg. He's had a lot of great iconic films. And I still haven't seen Disclosure Day, though. That's the newest film that he's released, and I still haven't seen it. So I look forward to that. But in any case, I know I digressed a little bit, but the reason I was actually happy that Jurassic Park was going to be part of the conversation today, and obviously it came out of some very unfortunate news, but one of the subjects that I've been wanting to talk about, and I feel like this is a perfect transition into that subject, is this idea of paying homage, and this idea of being able to respect those things or those people that might have come before you, the examples that have come before you, honoring them, respecting them, and also setting a good example and tone for what might be next. And I mentioned before, like, I said that with Jurassic Park, in this case, it was just filmmaking, right? But I think as people, we do that. As I'm sure, I'm not a parent myself, but as parents, I'm sure that becomes a very big, important piece to try to take what you've maybe been given so far, good or bad, and creating something new, something better, or doing the best you can with what you have. And, that's one of the things that I love with, I think, just storytelling in general. And I think that's, there's stories are obviously told in a number of ways. I mean, even like, one really cool example, and this is in the realm of music. One of my favorite things about, especially like a lot of rap and hip hop does that today, is, they pay homage to the generations before. You'll hear a lot of beats, or a lot of, or those, what they call a sampling, like they'll sample an older song, like even a lot of classical songs, and then they'll turn it into like their own rap beat. They'll slow it down, they'll speed it up, they'll add bass to it, they'll reverse it, or whatever it might be. Like, one of my favorite examples of that recently that I learned, I actually hadn't noticed this, because I got to be honest with you, I'm such a nerd when it comes to hearing music. Like, I've had so many moments where, and my family used to get a kick out of it, and they still do. I just, like when I was younger, especially, like we would go somewhere, and let's say we were at like a store or in any kind of public setting, and I would hear a song playing, and I'd be like, wait, I've heard that song before. And a lot of times I would draw it back to a movie. I like, oh, that song comes out in this movie during this particular scene, and I can recall. And they would always be like, how the hell did you remember that? And it's just, I feel like there's an association I have when it comes to music and film. Like, I feel like those two things go hand in hand in a way that I feel like it's poetry. It's like that what is it, like that meme of Martin Scorsese, the director, where he's just like, and it says absolute cinema, and he's just like he just puts his hands up. But yeah, I feel like those two things going hand in hand is a really beautiful synergy. And I know there's been a handful of times where I've caught those things, but then I love it when I didn't know that beforehand, and then somebody like introduces that idea to me. So as an example, what I was going to say is, I was just recently listening to Good Life by Kanye West and T-Pain. I was listening to that, and I just realized that the background music, like the main beat, is, there's a part of, what Michael Jackson song is it? Sorry, I'm like singing the song in my head. What song is it? Is it Wanna Be Started Something? It's one of those Michael Jackson songs. And forgive me for like my brain processing, but yeah, it's really cool because Kanye and whoever else worked on the music, it was probably just Kanye, but like slowed it down and like put it to the beat of the music that he wanted in that song. And I love when people do, like artists do that, because I feel like you're acknowledging that there were some really great geniuses in whatever, field of entertainment or work that, you really admired what they did. They probably inspired your work to a degree or made you want to do what you do today. And then you turned it into something brand new, something that you find as like, like it's your own. It identifies just with you and how you interpret things, how you have wanted to sculpt all that you've been given, and I feel like that's what we all do. And even just in regular day-to-day things, I feel like people always say, you're a product of your environment. And I feel like too, there's like a second piece to that. It's like, yes, you're a product of your environment just by default, but also it's like what do you make of the sum of all things that you've been given? Like, what do you make of it? Do you just kind of like run on the momentum and do the same thing? Do you stop for a minute, try to turn it into something new? Do you try to stop and process it maybe? Because again, there's a good and bad side to that. There's good things you could have grown up with. There's very bad things you could have grown up with around you. And yet you find a way to turn that into something, whether it's the same thing, something different. And I feel like that's such an interesting, at least in my opinion, it's a very interesting thing that I feel that a lot of us don't understand about other people. Because I'm barely going to be 30, and I feel like there's so many things that I've unpacked just in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of my environment, who I grew up around, what I grew up around, family, friends, and understanding the habits that I've picked up, and how have I chosen to establish those things? How have I chosen to change those things, or have some sort of self-awareness, to try to maybe make it a little bit more, I don't even want to say better, but just more tailored to what I want to do with my life, who I want to be. And it's a very beautiful balance that you end up finding the more you kind of like work on that, or you acknowledge it for what it is. Because I think the other really beautiful thing when you're, again, whether it's something that you're working on for yourself or even a craft that you're working on, it's really cool when you kind of sit there and you go, wow, like, I got to do some of this stuff because, there's other people that really inspired me to do something, or I really enjoyed watching this person do this. And I know that I wanted to do something like that one day. Like, I know one of the reasons I even did this podcast to begin with, I always enjoyed listening to people do interviews, or even just do like any kind of public speaking. Because I feel like I'm a social butterfly. And I know that a lot of people around me don't necessarily have the same comfort socially, to speak in front of a crowd, or to, express themselves in any kind of way that, because when you speak in front of people, you're vulnerable. Things can happen unexpected. You might make a mistake, and that can cause a certain level of insecurity, any kind of nervousness or fear. So you kind of have to push yourself. And even me being an extrovert, there's been a lot of times where I've had to speak publicly and, in front of people. And I'm still nervous as hell. Like I'm still like thinking about what I'm going to say, what I'm not going to say. And you can't help it. We're human. No matter how much you might be comfortable with something, there's always going to be an element of pressure and a lot of it is self-induced, but still you're going to feel that. And it's it's really, been something that even might be a little bit more in my comfort zone. And yet I've learned, how to speak about certain things, or like ways that people draw in, an audience when they're telling a story. And, but I also respect the fact that so many people have mastered that craft, or have really put themselves out there and had a lot of trial and error along the way. But what I love about it too, and I think especially when it came to like a lot of public speaking, listening to like TED Talks or interviews, roundtable talks, is there's always like, there's a voice of reason that pops in at some point. And I've always honored and respected that, because, one of the biggest morals and values that I've always done my best to hold on to is, you can't forget where you came from. You can't forget those that came before you that maybe helped or set you up for success, or just gave you an opportunity to do something. And then it just became a matter of what you chose to do with that opportunity. But I've always loved and appreciated that the opportunity is always going to present itself one way or the other. And it's just a matter of who might offer that to you, or how it comes to be, and what you make of it. But I've always appreciated that, like every time that I've heard a public speaker talk, or I would say about at least 95% of the time, they always reference someone else that was like a mentor, or someone they grew up with that helped them along the way, or just someone that helped them in general with maybe something that they were dealing with in their past. That to me tells me that we are in this really cool, as generations go by, we have an ultimate opportunity to take from the past generations, but not just selfishly take from them and claim it as our own, or claim it as a strength of just our own. It's to learn and to evolve. Like, I feel like, you listen to, people talk about evolution just as a science. It's inevitable, but it's like, how do you want to evolve? Do you want to evolve in a way that just allows you to survive, or do you want to evolve so that you can thrive? And I feel like there's a big difference. And I feel like one of the most key elements to the thrive piece, if that's the direction you want to go, is you have to respect what came before you, because it's the foundation you're sitting on, whether you like it or not. And no one truly does any of this alone, or just within their own regard. At the end of the day, do you make a lot of those choices? Oh, sure. And the responsibility ultimately falls in your hands in terms of what you do with your opportunities. But at the same time, you have to always keep in mind that somebody else came before you and did some version of this, whether it was better or worse than what you might be doing now, or whatever level that you're doing it at now. But that still exists. You can't take that away. And to me, I will say, like, to kind of go off on this tangent for a second, is just the fact that I hear a lot of people who become successful, or, have really mastered their craft or their lifestyle, whatever it might be. But it's very clear they walk around ignoring or pretending that what came before them, those who came before them, those who might have set them up for success or given them the opportunities that they've had to now live in the success they have now, they walk around as if they have forgotten it, or they choose to walk around, with turning a blind eye to it. And to me, it's very unfortunate. And I don't say this to particularly judge anyone or to speak badly on anyone, but I will say this. I think the moment that you forget where you came from, or you forget the people that came before you, or the people that gave you opportunities, or may have just set an example and set a mold for what you could do with your life and the opportunities you're given. The moment you forget that, I think you forget what humanity is all about. I mean, I know that sounds like a very blanket statement, but I feel like it's very true, because if you think about any success that you've had, whether you intend that to be the case or not, you have now set an example for somebody out there. If your company became something, if you were an entrepreneur and you created a business that now has become successful, there's going to be at least one person that kind of had an idea of what you did to get there, what your story was, of course they're going to be inspired to do the same thing. Because again, it's inevitable. I can't, I mean, when we're kids, and look, people say this all the time, kids are as honest as they come, right? And, kids will always, they'll tell you when they like or don't like something, right? But they also, us as kids, when we're children, most of the time, we're not thinking about all the things that we're observing and the habits that we're picking up. We just do. And to me, that is the ultimate evidence that goes to show that we're designed to take from what's around us, especially when we're still developing. Our brain is developing, our bodies are developing. We're going to take from some of these things. And I think that it's such an important thing to recognize when it comes to how do you choose to grow when you become a little bit more aware of that stuff. How do you start to be that sponge, take some of these things in, absorb them, and then it's almost like you can look at yourself as this machine, right? Like there's an input and there's an output. And sometimes you get that input, whatever, information, seeing certain examples of things, lessons you've learned, whatever. And then once it's in, you as the machine start to almost resculpt it, right? And you're putting all these pieces together. You're putting together this new sculpture. You're molding it into something. And then when you put it back out, it's something new. But you can't ignore that the pieces you used to mold that thing that you're now putting out, you didn't just create them yourself. They came from something else. And again, good or bad, but I think a lot of times too, you have to recognize that, because even if, let's say, you grew up with certain bad examples or bad experiences or bad people, I think you still, to a degree, and I've heard psychologists and therapists talk about this, that you still, to a degree, a way that you get past some of that trauma or those difficult times is you learn to accept it for what it is, unfortunately, because that's what allows you to somewhat be able to take ownership of your experience and not let it define you. But the acceptance is one of the key foundational steps to that. And same thing, you recognize it for what it is. You don't ignore it. You acknowledge that maybe, if you had bad examples around you, maybe you've made some mistakes. Maybe you can acknowledge the fact that, maybe it wasn't just me trying to be a bad person. Maybe I have associated things with what I grew up with, or what I was surrounded by as a child, or just all that I've ever known is this. And I acknowledge that maybe that's why I've made mistakes. But the moment you do something like that, it gives you so much more room and opportunity to do otherwise, to do better, and maybe just to do more of what you would prefer to do. And, but again, it's accepting what has come before you and where it comes from. And the other beautiful thing, like, I watch a lot of actors, and I know this is like a lot of people, when people talk about actors, like, oh, they come from such a privileged, place. It's a whole different reality, and I agree to a degree, it really is. But when certain actors talk about embodying characters, it fascinates me when they talk about what they do. Some people talk about method acting or all the crazy shit that they do to try to get into character or to stay into character while they're on set and this and that. But there's also a lot of research that some actors have talked about. And to me, that's also very interesting, because their job is to embody a character, whether it was a real character, like a historical character or whatever, or it's a fictional character somebody wrote up. But what ultimately allows them to become that character is they're taking from the subject matter or the material they've been given by their directors, the writers, whatever, and they make it what it is today. Like, I think about the Joker. Really, it's a really fucked up character, right? Different versions of that character have been in film and television for a long time. But think about, like, somebody who's given that script, like Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix, or even some of the older Jokers like Jack Nicholson. They're given a script of what this character's supposed to be. It's not like any of these actors can walk onto set without giving any subject material. Oh, I'm the Joker now. Especially if they have no familiarity to the character or what that character's supposed to be. The source material is their foundation. Now, is that the only reason that they made it magical or such a really, powerful character on film. No, they clearly made it their own. But what did they start with? The script, the material they were given to say, this is what the movie's going to be about. This is what the script is. This is where the story is going to go. And that's what this character is going to do in this movie or this TV show. This is the story they're going to drive. That's where they start. And then they make it their own. And I think it's essential to what creativity is, to what being a human is, and what evolution really is a product of. And I think, are we all going to be perfect in how we learn from each other, or how we are able to create something new for ourselves and it's going to be great the first time? No, there's a lot of trial and error in that. And I feel like that never stops. But that's also kind of the point, is because all the people that came before us, they had a lot of trial and error before they probably came to the success they have. There's always that example of Thomas Edison. He had 1,000 failed inventions. I don't know if it was 100 or 1,000, but failed inventions before then he created the light bulb. And the light bulb changed the world, literally. So it's like, or like even I mentioned earlier, Oppenheimer, who was the person that created the atomic bomb. He had a lot of things that went wrong in his personal life and his professional life before he created this atomic bomb. And look, for better or worse, it changed the course of humanity. It really did. And it weighed heavy on him. But he worked with all these other great scientists, people that he learned from, people that he didn't know that he maybe could learn from. That's what allowed him to get where he was. And I feel like a lot of times, even if we don't acknowledge it all the time or we don't say it out loud, it's just inevitable. It is what it is. To quote Ian Malcolm, Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And you will always find a way to create something. You'll always find a way to make something of yourself or your opportunities. But it starts with what you've been given. And a lot of times I think even when we have an idea of something, it could be an original idea, but what has our brain done up to that point? It's developed all this other information. If our brain hadn't taken in all the information that we have up to that point where we might have an epiphany or an idea, the idea probably wouldn't exist, right? There's so many different ways you can look at it. I mean, I even think about if you're someone that likes to go to the gym and you got a physical goal, you like to exercise. The goal is, and the idea is to maybe sculpt your body a specific way, to be in a certain shape, to lose body fat, or just to be healthier. But what does it start with? What do they always say? It's 80% diet, 20% exercise. What are you putting into your body? That's what's going to help put out what you're going to ultimately become, health-wise, physical-wise, whatever. That's how it starts. You can't do one without the other. And don't get me wrong, some of those things can be very challenging to try to balance out in your life when you're thinking about all the things that have become input in your life and what do you choose to output. Because sometimes I think we see it as, there's been all this input in my life and maybe I only want to put out 60 or 70% of it. But I feel like the way we really got to look at it to help us try to make it the most, how can I say this, that it feels the most efficient or successful or personal to us, is don't think of it as percentages. Just think of it as what kind of mixture, combination, concoction are you putting together? And ultimately it's, it's like a good recipe or a cocktail. Like some people might make it one way. Maybe you think, you know what? I want to make it a little bit different. Maybe I don't need this, but I want to add this. But how did you start with the original recipe? I mean, I'm telling you guys, it's inevitable in humanity that you're always going to take from what might have come before you or what other people have given you or whatever it might be. And it's not always about crediting those people, but it's about just acknowledging that that's part of life. And when you don't, I feel like you're kind of missing the point a little bit sometimes. So, I've met a lot of people who unfortunately they very, very intensely, even at times, choose to ignore that reality. And I feel like then there's this missing link that, yes, might give you a certain level of success, but it might not give you fulfillment, or it might not give you true purpose. And I don't know about any of you guys, and again, to each their own, but I'd rather live a life fulfilled than a life that came with success, but that in a way was a success with conditions. Because, a lot of times, I think past generations too, I mean, every generation is different, right? The idea of success or being able just to survive and support became way more important than finding fulfillment. Fulfillment is in some ways a luxury. To be able to try to find fulfillment or pursuing a passion, it can seem as a luxury at times. But at the same time, it's about not just what you do with your lifestyle, just what you do with your life and how you find value. And I feel like as people, the more we pursue our passions or that we allow ourselves to be taken care of to a degree, and we do what we can to take care of ourselves, that's going to equip us in a way unlike anything else to still succeed in life and to survive, but to also be able to contribute to society. Because now we understood the assignment now. We know what it is to be human. We know what it is to live a life that comes with mistakes, trial and error, things not always going our way, things happen unexpectedly, but your heart is in the right place and your intention is a lot more powerful than you realize. And the intention starts to continuously go in the direction you want it to. It's not misguided. The intention is true and it's powerful because it will inspire someone else. It will be an example for someone else. And that's how you contribute to society half the time. You don't realize it. You don't intentionally do it all the time. But the intention of just trying to be the best you can be, to take care of yourself, it will become an example of somebody else that they will admire, that they will take from, and they'll go out and do great stuff. And it's not about giving all the credit and drawing those lines back. It's about knowing that it could do that. So why wouldn't we try? So, in any case, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to dive into more. I'm very excited to jump into next week's. I have a really good episode coming in next week. And again, in a couple weeks, I'm going to have someone right next to me. So I'm so excited to have the first guest on. Also, if anybody, again, has any recommendations, any questions you'd like me to answer as I have guests on, anything else you'd like to hear me talk about, that you'd like to see from me, please drop it in the comments. Like and subscribe, of course, to the YouTube channel for those of you who are watching. Once again, rest in peace, Sam Neill, legend. And I hope you all have a great weekend. You have a great day, a great night, wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing. And spread the word. Anybody you think could use a good word, a nice conversation, something to have on in the background, spread the word, let them know about the Daydreamers podcast, and I'd be honored to be a part of your day. So you all take care, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.